Hello and welcome to the Mississippi Flyway Roadmap Grasslands Conservation Symposium. My name is Jim Giocomo. I am the coordinator of the Oaks and Prairies Joint Venture for American Bird Conservancy, and today we're going to be talking about learning from and embracing USDA Farm Bill and other large conservation programs for grassland conservation. Today I'll be doing an overview of U.S. Farm Bills and other large-scale conservation programs, a quick tour, and then move on to using one of the programs, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, to build new conservation partners, and then move into expanding our imagination with the Grassland Restoration Incentive Program and lessons learned from our experiences using the USDA programs mixed with other sources of conservation resources. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about the U.S. Farm Bill and the grassland conservation. Under the 2008 Farm Bill, the conservation programs title, there's a whole bunch of money involved in the USDA Farm Bill, and about 7% of that money out of $60 billion goes to conservation. So that's about $867 billion, and this goes towards working lands, land retirement, easements, conservation compliance, which I won't talk about too much, and then partnerships and grants. And then there are other types of conservation programs such as watershed programs, emergency programs, and technical assistance that are authorized under other non-Farm Bill legislation. The two largest working lands programs are EQIP and CSP. First one that I'm going to talk about is CSP, or the Conservation Stewardship Program. It provides financial and technical assistance to maintain and improve existing conservation systems and to adopt additional conservation activities in comprehensive manner on a producer's entire operation. Basically, they pay producers and landowners to keep doing good things and to do more good things on land where they're already doing great things. In FY 2019, it was $700 million, and it's set to increase to $1 billion through 2023 annually. The next program is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. The EQIP provides financial and technical assistance to plan and install structural, vegetative, and land management practices on eligible land that's been farmed, and focus on water quality and quantity related practices, soil health improvement, and wildlife habitat. EQIP was reauthorized at $1.75 billion for FY19 and is going to increase to $2.025 billion by FY23. That's an annual amount. An increased allocation for wildlife-related practices from 5% of that total $1.75 billion in 2019 to 10%. So each state is required to figure out how 10% is going to go to wildlife practices. And this also includes the Conservation Innovation Grants, which is a part of a kind of a research, try some new things program under the EQIP program. Other programs include the CRP, or the Conservation Reserve Program, which is the largest land retirement program. In FY 2019, they allocated to 24 million acres that could be retired from production, increasing up to 27 million by FY 2019, and provides an annual rental payment to producers to replace crops on highly erodible and environmentally sensitive land with long-term resource conservation plantings. So places like next to streams and other areas where the soil is probably going to erode, would go back to planting native and vegetation to stabilize the soil. And then another program is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, or ACEP, which is another $450 million annually for FY 2019 through 2023. And the ACEP provides financial and technical assistance through easements, agricultural land easements that limit non-agricultural uses on productive or farmer grasslands, and wetland reserved easements that protect and restore wetlands. Both are used for protection of wildlife habitat. And not to leave out our friends in Canada, the Canadian Natural Heritage Conservation Program funded a $100 million program to safeguard important habitats for species at risk and support privately protected areas and ecologically sensitive landscapes to result in conservation of 200,000 hectares or 490,000 acres over the next 4 years. That's an area 3 times the size of Toronto. And the program is to directly contribute to Canada's target of a national initiative to protect at least 17% of land and freshwater and 10% of marine areas by 2020. So lots of money involved and lots of federal level programs in both the United States and Canada. And one of the take homes is it's lots of opportunities, and they are increasing in certain areas and decreasing in other areas. And in this one, you can see the green line is the increase in partnerships and other funding starting in 2019, 2020. And that's where we've been working in the Oaks and Prairies joint venture. So the one program, the partnership program that green line is showing is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, or RCPP. And RCPP is a conservation enterprise of Natural Resource Conservation Service under the partnership agreements. NRCS and partners, NGOs, state, federal partners, leverage and target their respective resources to deliver conservation assistance to producers and landowners to address priority natural resource concerns, which include the soil, the water, and the wildlife. The most successful RCPP projects have 4 common characteristics: innovative, leverage additional conservations, offer impactful solutions, and engage more participants. The more of each of these that can be accomplished, the more likely an application for an RCPP is successful. So why should we care about this? $300 million per year to increase partnerships with NRCS to open up availability of other programs. So it creates linkages to EQIP, which has even more funding that is usually underutilized for wildlife-related projects, and opens the door for increased technical assistance. To put conservation on the ground, we need people working with private landowners in most of the areas in the central United States that is 90 to 98% privately owned land. So these programs are targeting that 90 to 90% of the land, that with at least 5 to 10% of it is earmarked to go towards wildlife habitat. As an example of one of these partnerships, the Oaks and Prairies joint venture has put together what we call the Grassland Restoration Incentive Program, or GRIP, with all of the partners shown on the screen and the hard work of all of the staff, former and current, of the Oaks and Prairies joint venture, working together to provide an incentive program that takes advantages of an RCPP, as well as bringing additional resources to fill in where the federal programs can't reach. And I'm going to discuss a bit about our program right now. So in the Oaks and Prairies joint venture, which is parts of central Texas and central Oklahoma, we have the same kind of grassland bird decline issues as the rest of this central North America, with the grassland birds declining at significant rates. These percentages represent the grassland bird decline since 1970 for the Oaks and Prairies region, and it matches up well with the recent 3 billion bird loss paper, showing that 1/4 of the 3 billion birds lost were grassland birds. And as an example, 3 in 4 eastern meadowlarks lost since 1970, which matches with what we've calculated for the Oaks and Prairies joint venture. So to put conservation programs together, we talk a lot about habitat and wildlife populations and how using habitat management we can increase wildlife populations. But the other parts that we need to talk about just as much include finding funding and putting people together with folks who can provide technical guidance to put the right kinds of habitats in the right places to support wildlife populations. So this is the part that we've been working on since 2013. And we put together a grassland conservation business plan and calculated based on bird population declines that we needed 3 million acres of good grassland management over 10 years, or 5% of the 60 million acres of the total Oaks and Prairies joint venture region. And our business plan has various strategies including providing technical and financial incentives through the Grassland Restoration Incentive Program, or GRIP, and supporting local cooperatives, developing market-based conservation strategies, and implementing a strategic communications plan that would arrest the population decline of various bird species, including northern bobwhite, at different levels depending on how much effort we put into each one of these strategies. And the more we can implement each of the strategies, the higher that population leveling off and then eventually increasing will occur. So our business plan links bird populations to acres to dollars, and the dollars relate to the people involved. So what we've been doing is building a conservation supply chain where we're linking national planning and policy to regional, state level rulemaking and programs, and then to on-the-ground conservation with landowners, one-on-one, working with technical assistance professionals. And basically this is a last mile delivery problem, just like FedEx and Amazon delivering packages, and the water and internet companies trying to link up houses to the larger supplies. The last mile of that delivery is the most expensive, that takes the most time and is the most costly, and takes a lot of effort to put together. And that's what we're working on right now for conservation. So one of the things we need to think about in this case is, who are our customers? Who can we work with? And the first one are the bird species. If the practices that we're putting on the ground aren't the right thing for the bird species, then we shouldn't be doing those practices. The next is partner biologists. We're just a small organization of a few people that staff the Oaks and Prairies joint venture, but it's a staff that's working for a larger partnership, and especially our state and federal partners have a lot of staff on the ground already working with landowners who own the private land and who may or may not have an interest in wildlife, but could implement some of these programs. Those partner biologists work with landowners, and the landowners, again, are the ones that own the land. And so what we've put together is a grassland restoration incentive program where GRIP provides incentive payments to help landowners put conservation practices on the ground. It works in parallel with USDA programs like EQIP, but there's a minimum of a 25-acre practice area, because that's the minimum territory of at least one of our grassland birds, the northern bobwhite quail. If we can't do 25 acres, we wouldn't have a whole territory for one quail pair. And we require that the landowners must work with one of our partner biologists to write a plan. So we have eligible counties. We have 30 counties in Texas and 10 counties in Oklahoma where the program can be implemented. And that's about one third of the counties in the Oaks and Prairies region. And we limit the practices to just a few practices, the same practices that Alda Leopold talked about in the early days of developing wildlife management, which include the axe, cow, plow, and fire. So we have prescribed fire, brush management, prescribed grazing, and native grass reseeding. And basically, we work to restore grassland function for wildlife in working lands. 3 million acres over 10 years is our goal, which means 300,000 acres per year. That's our big, hairy, audacious goal, or BHAG. We use a partner-based team to achieve shared objectives. We try to find objectives that match what our landowners looking for and what our partner biologists are trying to get with their responsibility for wildlife management. It uses existing partners, private land staff, and NGO partners run the contracts and do the payments to make fast-moving projects. Also, with an RCPP, we're able to add USDA funding, which allows for a larger pool of funding, and then that pool of funding in the U.S. Federal Farm Bill conservation title, there's a lot more paperwork that needs to be done, but the JV staff could help with paperwork. So bigger projects we funnel into the federal programs, and projects that we need to move fast and are kind of smaller and bigger bang for our buck, like prescribed fire, we can do with non-federal funds, and that way we can kind of get the best of both worlds. So it works in concert with USDA Farm Bill programs, relies on focal areas to target conservation efforts. So we're not just doing random acts of conservation kindness. We're trying to target and stack up conservation in certain areas to allow for area-sensitive species to increase populations. And then we incorporate a lot of monitoring of habitat and birds. So our GRIP practices go from the bottom of this pyramid, which are the most expensive, most time-consuming, removing invasive and woody and herbaceous plants through mechanical removal using bulldozers, basically, and to clear areas to create grasslands out of shrub encroached areas, to planting, and then up to grazing and prescribed fire, which are our cheapest and fastest and best ways to maintain grasslands. We're trying to move all of our landowners from the point of overgrown, shrubby, encroached grassland areas to fire maintained, grazing maintained systems that have greater conservation benefit, more natural, more resilient, cheaper, and provide that win-win-win situation where the wildlife populations win, the landowner achieves their objectives of having grazable areas, and then society in general wins because greater water quality and greater habitat and environmental values are increased. So that's what we're going for. Since 2014, late 2013, we've done over 200 projects, over 160,000 acres since 2014, and about $2.2 million in total agreements so far. So our goal is 300,000 acres a year, and since 2014, we've done 106,000 acres. We've done a lot, but we're still ramping up to that level that we need to get to, and the fact that we know where the level is tells us how much more we need to get to work. We can also talk about the number of birds that are impacted by species based on models and monitoring that we do with within our focal counties. So, for example, we estimate that 6,800 more territories of northern bobwhites are available due to the work that has been done with our private landowners. And then the GRIP projects can become places to test solutions in real world conditions, which equal science opportunities. Right now, working with universities, that they work in areas where they can control the land and have little test plots here and there that can do some projects, but we have, with existing relationships with state biologists and partners, we can steer universities towards areas where we're putting practices on the ground under real world conditions and in larger patches to test whether what we think we're doing on the ground is actually happening in increasing bird populations. And some key lessons we learned from our GRIP experiences, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. Simple for the landowners and simple for our partner biologists who are working with the landowners, so that they'll adopt the practice of using the larger federal programs. Having a unifying structure so that there's no difference in how it looks from the federal and non-federal side, and we use the systems that are built within the USDA practice standards to establish practices, but then we pay for it through partners depending on how fast and how much needs to be done. We use a very limited number of USDA practices, which limits this paradox of choice problems. If you have too many choices, it's hard to choose. Your brain will shut down, and you don't want to choose from 20 choices, but choosing from 4 choices makes the choice a lot easier. Like I said, it uses USDA practices and payment schedules, so we don't have to argue about that because they're already established. And we're capturing donated effort from landowners to leverage against federal grants and other grants. And we also have technical assistance from state wildlife agencies and federal agencies that can be leveraged for non-federal grants. And so it provides flexibility with funding sources, and we can target conservation landscapes, which some of our federal and state agencies can't, because they have to work with the constituency that ask for help instead of being able to target areas. It's hard to say no to constituents. We have an advanced ranking system which pushes projects towards that fire and grazing maintained system. We have outcome-based projects so that we pay for the project when the practice is done, and we monitor the habitat and the bird populations. So we're providing tools for our partners to work with landowners by providing technical assistance and creating win-win situations. But it's not just about dollars, it's about people. And we're building on the backbone of many wildlife agencies have private lands biologists out there working with landowners to build relationships that'll build practices on the ground. And we support those relationships by providing the financial assistance that we can and providing the support to do the paperwork to get the financial assistance as easily as possible to the private landowners to do practices on the ground. And working within this kind of adaptive management plan, do, learn framework, we have lots of partners doing lots of different things, and it takes all of them doing the work together to get the whole system working. And it takes a long time to build, but once it's built, each part supports the others and makes the system work itself and drive conservation on the ground. Like I said, we're at 106,000 acres so far, and we're shooting for 300,000 a year, and in a few more years we're hoping to get there. Things are increasing exponentially as we speak. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can check out our website at www.opjv.org, or you can email me at jgiocomo@abcbirds.org. Thank you.